When the doctors told me my 8-year-old daughter had only 3 days to live, my world collapsed. I held her hand as her body gave up, as the machines showed worse and worse numbers, as everyone prepared for the inevitable. I prayed, I cried, I begged for a miracle I knew wouldn't come. On the 3rd day, everyone expected her to die at any moment. But on the 7th day, when Sophia should have been dead for 4 days, she opened her eyes and whispered my name. What happened in that hospital room defies everything medicine knows, and nobody can explain it. I remember every detail of that Tuesday morning with a clarity that haunts me. I was standing in the kitchen folding dish towels when my phone rang. The moment I saw the school's number on the screen, my stomach dropped. Parents know that feeling, that instant recognition that something is wrong. The school nurse's voice was tight with controlled panic. Sophia had collapsed during recess. I needed to come immediately. My hands started shaking so badly I could barely grip my car keys. I don't remember the drive to the school. I don't remember parking. All I remember is running through the hallways toward the nurse's office, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst out of my chest. When I saw Sophia lying on that small cot, I felt my knees go weak. This wasn't my daughter. My Sophia was vibrant and energetic, always moving, always laughing. This pale, fragile child with labored breathing couldn't be the same little girl who'd been eating breakfast at my table just hours ago. She looked at me with unfocused eyes and whispered that everything hurt, not just her head, everything. I scooped her up. She felt so light in my arms, too light, and carried her to my car. I called my husband Roberto while driving one-handed, probably breaking every traffic law, my voice high and panicked as I told him to meet us at St. Mary's Medical Center. The emergency room was a blur of fluorescent lights and concerned faces. They took Sophia from my arms and wheeled her away on a gurney, and I felt like they were taking a piece of my soul with them. Roberto arrived 20 minutes later, his face white with fear, and we held each other in that waiting room, not speaking because there were no words for the terror we both felt. The tests started. Blood work, vital signs, then more serious tests, a CT scan, an MRI. Each new test made the knot in my stomach tighten. I watched through windows as my 8-year-old daughter disappeared into massive machines, her small body swallowed by technology, designed to find the thing we all feared was lurking inside her. Hours passed. I counted ceiling tiles. I memorized the pattern on the waiting room floor. I held Roberto's hand so tightly my fingers went numb. Other families came and went, their own dramas playing out around us, but I barely noticed them. My entire world had narrowed to one single focus, Sophia. When Dr. Elizabeth Chen finally approached us, I knew immediately from her face that the news was bad. She was the head of pediatric oncology. I saw it on her badge, and that single word, oncology, made my vision blur with tears before she even spoke. She led us to a private consultation room. Private rooms meant bad news. I had watched enough medical dramas to know that, but nothing could have prepared me for what she said next. Diffuse intrinsic pontine glioma. The words meant nothing to me at first. They were just sounds, medical jargon that my brain couldn't process. But then Dr. Chen pulled up Sophia's brain scans on her computer, and I saw it. A mass, a shadow, a tumor growing inside my daughter's brain, wrapped around her brainstem like a parasite. I made a sound I didn't know I was capable of making, a wail of pure anguish that came from somewhere deep in my chest. Roberto went completely still beside me, his hand squeezing mine so hard I thought bones might break. But I didn't care about the pain. Physical pain was nothing compared to what Dr. Chen was telling us. The tumor was inoperable. It was tangled throughout the brainstem, controlling vital functions like breathing and heartbeat. Removing it surgically would kill Sophia instantly. And even if they could remove it, DIPG tumors were always fatal. Always. Then came the words that destroyed me completely. Based on the size and location of the tumor and how rapidly Sophia's symptoms have progressed, I believe she has approximately 3 days to live. I'm so very sorry. 3 days. 72 hours. I had gotten more notice before a dentist appointment. I had spent longer planning birthday parties. 3 days was nothing. It was barely enough time to comprehend what was happening, let alone prepare for it. I begged Dr. Chen to do something. Anything, chemotherapy, radiation, experimental treatments. I would sell our house. I would go into debt for the rest of my life. I would give anything, do anything, if it meant saving my daughter. But Dr. Chen's face showed only compassion and sadness as she explained that nothing would work. DIPG tumors didn't respond to treatment. The tumor was too aggressive and too advanced. Sophia's body was already shutting down from the pressure on her brainstem. Treatment would only make her suffer more without extending her life. She told me to gather my family, to spend these last days with Sophia, to say goodbye. I wanted to scream at her. How dare she tell me to say goodbye to my 8-year-old daughter? How dare she suggest I accept this? But the rational part of my brain knew she was just doing her job. She had probably delivered this same terrible news to dozens of parents before me. She knew what was coming, even if I couldn't accept it. They moved Sophia to a private room, decorated with cheerful butterflies and rainbows. The irony was almost funny. Almost. My daughter was dying, and she was surrounded by symbols of transformation and hope. Sophia was awake, but confused. She kept asking me why she had to stay in the hospital, why I was crying. She didn't understand that she was dying. How do you explain death to an 8-year-old? How do you tell your child that her body is betraying her, that her brain is killing her, that in 3 days she'll be gone? I couldn't do it. I couldn't tell her. So I just held her and told her I loved her more than anything in the world. I said it over and over, as if love alone could tether her to this earth, could keep her alive through sheer force of will. Within hours, our hospital room filled with family and friends. My mother arrived first, immediately starting her rosary prayers, her weathered fingers moving from bead to bead. Roberto's brother Miguel came and took charge of the practical matters, because Roberto and I were beyond functioning. Sophia's teacher brought cards from her classmates. Her best friend Emma came with her parents, crying too hard to speak. Everyone was saying goodbye, everyone except me. I refused to say goodbye, because saying goodbye meant accepting that Sophia was dying, and I would never accept that. Never. That first night, I climbed into the hospital bed with Sophia and held her against my chest. I breathed in the scent of her hair, baby shampoo and something uniquely Sophia, and tried to memorize everything. The weight of her body, the sound of her breathing, the way her hand felt in mine. These would be my last memories of my daughter alive, and I needed them to last me the rest of my life. Roberto sat beside the bed holding Sophia's other hand, and I could feel him trembling. We didn't speak. What was there to say? Our daughter was dying, and words felt meaningless in the face of that reality. The machines beeped their steady rhythm, marking time. Each beep felt like a countdown. Each breath Sophia took might be one of her last. I found myself bargaining with God, with the universe, with anyone who might be listening. Take me instead. Let me trade places with her. She's just a child. She hasn't even had a chance to live yet. But no one answered my prayers. The machines kept beeping, Sophia kept breathing, and the countdown to her death continued, relentless and unstoppable. Dr. Chen checked on us throughout the night, and each time she entered the room, I searched her face desperately for hope. But her expression only grew more grave with each visit. Sophia's blood pressure was dropping, her oxygen saturation was declining. Her body was doing exactly what the doctors had predicted it would do, shutting down, system by system, as the tumor crushed her brainstem. As dawn broke on what I now knew was Sophia's second-to-last day on Earth, I watched the sunrise through the hospital window and felt nothing. The world was continuing as if nothing had changed, as if my daughter wasn't dying, as if my entire life wasn't being ripped apart. I hated everyone who got to wake up to a normal day. I hated the nurses who came in with their professional sympathy. I hated God for letting this happen. But most of all, I hated myself for being powerless to save my own child. Sophia's breathing became more labored as the day progressed. The nurse explained something called Cheney-Stokes respiration, irregular breaths with long pauses between them. It was a sign that death was approaching. I wished I didn't know that. I wished I could remain ignorant of all these horrible medical terms that described my daughter's dying process. People came to say goodbye. One by one, they entered the room to spend a few final moments with Sophia. My father whispered to her in Spanish about heaven. Sophia's cousin brought drawings. Her teacher read aloud from a book the class had made, every child contributing a page about their favorite memory with Sophia. I listened to those memories. Sophia sharing her lunch, Sophia being kind, Sophia making people laugh, and I wanted to scream. She was good, she was kind, she was loved, and she was dying anyway. Where was the justice in that? Where was the mercy? By evening, Sophia had stopped responding to our voices. She lay still and pale, her chest rising and falling with increasingly shallow breaths. Dr. Chen told us it would probably be tonight, maybe tomorrow morning at the latest. We should prepare ourselves. How do you prepare yourself for your child's death? What preparation could possibly be adequate for that? I wanted to ask Dr. Chen, but I couldn't form words anymore. I could only lie beside Sophia and sing her favorite lullabies in a voice hoarse from crying. The hospital chaplain came and performed last rites. He anointed Sophia with holy oil and spoke prayers over her dying body. Everyone said amen, and I said it too, but I didn't believe the words. I didn't believe in anything anymore except pain. As midnight approached, marking the beginning of Sophia's third day, her final day, I held my daughter and waited for her to die. The doctors had given us 3 days, and those 3 days were almost up. Everyone in that room knew what was coming. We were just waiting for it now. But what I didn't know, what none of us knew, was that everything we believed about those 3 days was wrong. We were counting down to an ending, but we were actually counting up to the beginning of something impossible, something that would shake the foundations of everything I thought I knew about medicine, about faith, about life and death itself. The countdown had begun, but we were counting the wrong direction. The machines became my enemy on the second day. Every beep felt like an accusation. Every alarm sent my heart racing. Every time a number changed on those monitors, I would stare at it, trying to understand if it meant Sophia was slipping further away, or if she was somehow impossibly holding on. I had stopped sleeping entirely. How could I sleep when my daughter was dying? Every time I closed my eyes, I was afraid I would miss her last breath. I was afraid she would die alone, without me there to hold her hand. So I stayed awake, watching her chest rise and fall, counting each breath like precious coins I was desperately trying to save. By afternoon of the second day, Sophia had stopped responding at all. I would call her name, stroke her face, kiss her forehead, and get nothing back. No flutter of eyelids, no squeeze of fingers, nothing. It was like she was already gone, and her body just hadn't figured it out yet. Dr. Chen gathered our family in the hallway to explain what was happening inside Sophia's brain. She used words like increased intracranial pressure and brainstem herniation and multi-organ failure. I tried to focus on what she was saying, but all I could hear was the subtext. Your daughter is dying. There's nothing we can do. Prepare yourself. The doctor told us the end would probably come suddenly. Sophia would simply stop breathing, and her heart would stop shortly after. It would be quick. It would be relatively peaceful. Those words were supposed to comfort me, but they didn't. They just made everything more real. After Dr. Chen left, I went back into Sophia's room and crawled into the bed beside her. I pulled her against my chest and felt how cold her skin had become. She had always been my warm little furnace, always radiating heat when I hugged her. Now she felt cool to the touch, and that terrified me more than anything else. I started talking to her, telling her stories about when she was little. I reminded her of the time she learned to ride her bike and crashed into the mailbox, but got right back on. I told her about the Christmas when she was 3 and insisted on leaving cookies and milk for Santa, even though we were at Grandma's house. I described every memory I could think of. trying to keep her connected to this world through the force of our shared history. Roberto sat on the other side of the bed, and I could hear him crying quietly. My strong, steady husband who never cried was breaking apart. He held Sophia's hand and told her she was his princess, his beautiful girl, his whole world. His voice cracked on every word, and each crack felt like a piece of my heart breaking off. The nurses came in regularly to check Sophia's vitals, and I watched their faces carefully. I had learned to read their expressions. When they looked at the monitors and then looked at us with that particular combination of sympathy and resignation, I knew the numbers were bad. I knew Sophia was slipping further away. One nurse, Jennifer, had tears in her eyes as she adjusted Sophia's IV. She whispered to me that she had a daughter the same age, and she couldn't imagine what I was going through. I wanted to tell her that I couldn't imagine it either, even though I was living it. My brain still couldn't fully process that this was real, that this was happening, that my daughter was actually dying. By evening of the second day, more family members arrived to say goodbye. My father came looking older than I had ever seen him. He sat beside Sophia's bed and spoke to her in Spanish about her great-grandmother in heaven, about how she would be waiting for Sophia with open arms. I hated him for it. I hated everyone who was accepting this, who was preparing for Sophia's death like it was inevitable, because to me, it wasn't inevitable. It couldn't be. She was 8 years old. 8-year-olds don't die. They get skinned knees and lose teeth and have birthday parties. They don't get brain tumors. They don't lie in hospital beds dying while their parents watch helplessly. Sophia's best friend Emma came with her parents, and watching that little girl approach the bed nearly destroyed me. Emma had made a friendship bracelet and tied it carefully around Sophia's wrist. Then she climbed up onto the bed and lay down next to Sophia, putting her arm around her. I heard Emma whisper, "You're my best friend forever. I won't ever forget you." And I had to leave the room because I couldn't breathe. I stood in the hallway gasping for air, my mother's arms around me, while inside that room an 8-year-old was saying goodbye to her dying best friend. When I came back in, Emma was gone, and Sophia was alone again. Alone with machines and monitors and medical equipment that couldn't save her. I climbed back into the bed and held her, and I started singing. All the lullabies she had loved as a baby. All the songs we used to sing in the car. I sang until my throat was raw, until my voice gave out, and then I sang some more because I didn't know what else to do. As night fell, Dr. Chen returned with worse news. Sophia's vital signs had deteriorated significantly. Her blood pressure was dangerously low. Her breathing had become something called agonal respirations, irregular gasps that signaled her body was shutting down. The doctor told us we were looking at hours now, not days, hours. I had hours left with my daughter, maybe 10 or 12 if we were lucky, maybe less. I asked Dr. Chen if Sophia was in pain, and the doctor assured me she wasn't. The medications were keeping her comfortable. When the end came, it would be peaceful. She would simply stop breathing and then her heart would stop. After Dr. Chen left, I looked at Roberto across Sophia's body. His eyes were red and swollen from crying. He looked like he had aged 10 years in 2 days. We had been married for 12 years, together for 15, and I had never seen him look so broken. "I can't do this," he whispered. "I can't watch her die." "We don't have a choice," I whispered back. "She needs us. We have to be strong for her." But I didn't feel strong. I felt like I was being torn apart from the inside. Every breath Sophia took might be her last, and I was powerless to stop it. I was her mother. I was supposed to protect her, and I was failing in the most fundamental way possible. The third day began at midnight, and I marked the transition with a strange sense of finality. This was it, Sophia's third and final day. According to Dr. Chen's predictions, Sophia would die sometime today, probably in the next few hours. I thought about the life Sophia would never get to live. She would never go to middle school, never learn to drive, never go to prom or graduate high school or go to college. She would never fall in love, never get married, never have children of her own. All those milestones, all those experiences, all those years, stolen by a tumor that had appeared out of nowhere and destroyed everything. At 3 in the morning, Sophia's monitors started screaming. Her oxygen levels had plummeted. Her breathing had stopped. I screamed. Roberto jumped up. Nurses rushed in. For one terrible moment, I thought this was it. This was the end. But then Sophia gasped. Her chest heaved. Her breathing resumed, labored and irregular but present. The crisis passed. The nurses adjusted her oxygen and reset the alarms. But I couldn't calm down. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. I felt like I was going to vomit. My mother pulled me into her arms and held me while I sobbed. She told me we had to accept God's will, that Sophia would be at peace soon, that we would see her again in heaven. But I didn't want to see her in heaven. I wanted her here, alive, laughing, being my daughter. As morning light crept through the hospital windows, I looked at Sophia and barely recognized her. She was so pale she looked almost translucent. Her lips had a bluish tint. Her breathing was so shallow I had to watch carefully to see if her chest was moving at all. The medical team came in and out, checking equipment, adjusting medications, speaking in low tones. No one said it directly, but I could see it in their faces. This was the end. They were preparing us for Sophia's death, which they expected would come at any moment. But Sophia kept breathing. Her heart kept beating. Hour after hour, she held on. By noon of the 3rd day, I had entered a strange state beyond panic. I had cried so much I had no tears left. I had begged and prayed and bargained until I had no words left. Now I just existed in a numb space, waiting for the inevitable. I lay beside Sophia and sang to her, even though my voice was barely a whisper now. I sang, "You Are My Sunshine," because it had always been her favorite. I sang and held her and tried to pour all my love into her through touch and sound, hoping somehow it would be enough to keep her tethered to this world. Roberto sat by the window, staring out at the parking lot below. I knew what he was thinking, because I was thinking it too. How could the world keep turning? How could people down there be going about their normal days, drinking coffee and making phone calls and living their lives, when up here our daughter was dying? Dr. Chen came for what I assumed would be her final visit. She checked Sophia's vitals and pulled me aside to speak privately. "Her body is shutting down," Dr. Chen said gently. "I don't believe she'll make it through the night. I want you to be prepared. When it happens, it will likely be quick. She'll stop breathing and then her heart will stop. It won't be violent. She'll just slip away." I nodded because I didn't trust myself to speak. "Doctor." Chen put her hand on my shoulder, and I saw genuine grief in her eyes. She cared. She really cared. But caring didn't change anything. Sophia was still dying. As evening approached on the 3rd day, the family gathered once more. 20 people crowded into that small hospital room and spilled into the hallway. We joined hands and prayed together. We shared memories of Sophia, celebrating her short life even as it was ending. Someone mentioned the time Sophia had dressed as a dinosaur for Halloween and refused to take the costume off for a week. A few people managed weak smiles at the memory. Someone else brought up the time she learned to ride her bike and rang the bell constantly because she was so proud. Each memory was precious and painful. As midnight approached, marking the beginning of the 4th day, I knew we had passed the 3-day deadline. Sophia should have been dead by now. The doctors had been clear about that, but she was still breathing, still holding on. I didn't dare hope. I couldn't let myself hope. But deep down, in a place I was afraid to acknowledge, I started to wonder. What if the doctors were wrong? What if Sophia could beat this? And then I looked at the monitors and saw something that made my breath catch. The numbers had stopped declining. For 3 days, every time I looked at those screens, the numbers had been worse. Sophia's oxygen saturation dropping, her blood pressure falling, everything trending downward toward death. But now, in the darkest hour of the night as the 4th day began, the numbers had stabilized. They weren't good numbers, but they weren't getting worse. I stared at those monitors, afraid to believe what I was seeing, afraid that if I acknowledged it, it would disappear. So I said nothing. I just held Sophia and watched those numbers and waited to see what the morning would bring. Something was changing, something impossible, and I was too terrified to hope it meant what I thought it might mean. I woke up on the third day, though woke up isn't right since I never actually slept, with a heavy certainty crushing my chest. This was the day. Today, Sophia would die. The 3 days the doctors had given us were up. I had watched the clock count down to this moment, and now there was nowhere left to run. Father Rodriguez arrived at 7 in the morning to perform the last rites. I had called him the night before, my voice barely functional from crying, and asked him to come. He was the priest who had baptized Sophia as an infant, who had watched her grow up in our parish, who had seen her giggle during Sunday school and play an angel in the Christmas pageant. Now he was here to prepare her for death. I helped set up the room for the ceremony, moving furniture with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. My mother had brought candles, battery-operated ones since the hospital wouldn't allow real flames, and a small statue of the Virgin Mary that had belonged to my grandmother. She positioned it on the bedside table facing Sophia, and I stared at Mary's serene face and felt rage building inside me. Where was this mercy everyone kept talking about? Where was God's love? My 8-year-old daughter was dying, and heaven was silent. Father Rodriguez anointed Sophia's forehead with blessed oil, making the sign of the cross. He anointed her hands, her small feet that would never run and play again. He spoke prayers in Latin, ancient words that had been spoken over the dying for centuries. The room filled with the sweet smell of the holy oil, and I breathed it in, wishing it could somehow heal her instead of just blessing her passage to death. Everyone in the room responded, "Amen," to the prayers. I said it too, but the word felt like ashes in my mouth. I didn't feel faithful. I felt abandoned, betrayed by a God who would let children suffer like this. After the ceremony ended, I knew we were in the final countdown. The hospital social worker had already given us pamphlets about planning a child's funeral, about grief support groups, about how to help siblings cope with loss. The paperwork of death was stacked on a table in the corner, waiting for us to fill it out after Sophia was gone. Sophia's godmother Carmen arrived from Chicago, having driven through the night. She had been my best friend since high school, and she pulled me into a fierce hug in the hallway before coming into the room. She had brought Sophia's baptism gown, the tiny white dress Sophia had worn as an infant when Carmen stood beside us and promised to guide her spiritual life. "I thought you might want to bury her in this," Carmen said softly, pulling the dress from her bag. I took it with trembling hands. It was so small. Had Sophia ever really been small enough to wear this? There was still a faint stain on the hem from where baby Sophia had spit up during the ceremony. I pressed the dress to my face and tried to smell baby Sophia, tried to capture some trace of that happier time, but there was only the scent of cedar from storage. I was trying to hold on to a past that was gone while the present slipped through my fingers like water. By mid-morning, our room had become a shrine. Someone had set up a tablet playing a slideshow of Sophia's life. I couldn't stop watching it. Sophia as a newborn, red-faced and screaming. Sophia taking her first wobbly steps. Sophia on her first day of kindergarten, missing her 2 front teeth. Sophia at her 8th birthday party 2 months ago, face smeared with chocolate cake, laughing with pure joy. That birthday party felt like it had happened in another lifetime. I could still hear the echo of her laughter, could still see her running through the backyard with her friends. How had we gotten from that moment to this one? How could life change so completely in just 2 months? Dr. Chen came at 11 o'clock with the worst update yet. Sophia's vital signs had deteriorated significantly overnight. Her blood pressure was barely registering. Her oxygen saturation was critically low despite maximum support. Her breathing had become agonal. The doctor said the word carefully, and I knew what it meant. Death rattles, the gasps a body makes when it's dying. "I believe we're looking at hours now," Dr. Chen said, her professional mask slipping slightly. I could see genuine emotion in her eyes. "I'm so sorry. There's nothing more we can do." Hours. Not even a full day anymore. Just hours. I nodded mechanically, unable to speak, unable to process that I was being told how many hours of my daughter's life remained. Roberto left abruptly. I found out later he had gone to the hospital chapel and collapsed on his knees before the altar. He begged God to take him instead. He offered his own life in exchange for Sophia's. He sobbed and pleaded with a God he wasn't sure existed. No one answered him. There was only silence and the faint smell of incense. While Roberto was gone, I dressed Sophia in her favorite pajamas, the purple ones with stars and moons. I brushed her hair gently, carefully, and put in the little butterfly clips she always wore. If these were her final hours, I wanted her to look like Sophia, not like a dying patient. "You're so beautiful, baby," I whispered to her, even though she couldn't hear me. "My beautiful girl." Emma came to visit one last time. She was Sophia's best friend, and her parents had carefully prepared her for what she would see. But no amount of preparation could really prepare an 8-year-old for this. Emma approached the bed hesitantly, clutching a handmade friendship bracelet in Sophia's favorite colors. "Hi, Sophia," Emma said, her voice small and scared. "I made this for you." She tied the bracelet around Sophia's thin wrist with careful fingers. Then she did something that shattered me completely. She climbed onto the bed, lay down next to Sophia, and put her arm around her. "I'll miss you forever," Emma whispered. "You're my best friend in the whole world." Emma's mother had to coax her out of the bed after 10 minutes, and Emma left crying, and I thought about all the people who would be damaged by Sophia's death. Not just me and Roberto, but all these other hearts that loved her. As afternoon faded to evening, everyone was exhausted. People sat or lay in various positions around the room, some praying, some dozing, some just staring at nothing. We had been in crisis mode for 3 days, and the emotional toll was showing on every face. I climbed back into the bed with Sophia and pulled her against my chest. She was so cold now. My warm little girl had become cold, and that single fact terrified me more than anything the doctors had said. Roberto returned from the chapel and took his position on the other side of the bed. We formed a protective circle around our dying daughter, our hands joined across her body. I could feel him shaking, or maybe I was shaking, or maybe we both were. At 8 o'clock, Dr. Chen came in for what I knew would be her final examination. She checked Sophia's vital signs, tested her reflexes, shined a light in her unresponsive eyes. When she finished, she looked at us with profound sadness. "I don't believe she'll make it through the night," she said gently. "Her body is giving up. I want you to be prepared." I nodded because what else could I do? I had no fight left in me, no protests, no bargaining. I had reached the bottom of grief, where there's nothing left but a hollow acceptance of the unbearable. As night fell and the hospital grew quiet, I held my vigil. I sang to Sophia in a voice destroyed by 3 days of crying. I sang every lullaby I had ever sung to her, every song we had shared. "Twinkle, twinkle, little star, you are my sunshine." Somewhere over the rainbow, my throat ached, my body ached, my soul ached with a pain I didn't know existed. As midnight approached, marking the beginning of the 4th day, everyone in that room believed we were in Sophia's final hours. The doctors had said 3 days. Those 3 days had passed. Death was overdue. We were all just waiting now, waiting for Sophia to take her last breath. But I noticed something strange, something I was afraid to acknowledge. The machines that had been my enemy for 3 days, constantly showing declining numbers, had stopped their downward march. Sophia's oxygen saturation hadn't dropped in hours. Her blood pressure, while dangerously low, had stabilized. Her breathing, though labored, had found a rhythm. I stared at those numbers, my heart beating faster. Was I imagining it? Was I seeing what I wanted to see instead of what was real? I said nothing. I didn't tell Roberto. I didn't call the nurse. I was too afraid that if I spoke it aloud, the improvement would vanish, so I just held Sophia and watched those monitors and waited. Something was happening, something I didn't understand, something that made no sense. And as the 4th day began, I dared to feel the most dangerous emotion possible, hope. Morning came on the 4th day, and Sophia was still breathing. That single fact felt surreal, impossible. The doctors had said 3 days. Everyone had prepared for her death. And yet she was still here, still holding on. When Nurse Jennifer entered at 6:30 for the morning vital signs check, I watched her face carefully. She approached the monitors, expecting to find a dead child or a child in her final moments. Instead, she found numbers that made her stop and stare. I saw her blink, saw her check the equipment, saw her check it again. Something was wrong, or rather, something was right that shouldn't be right. "Is everything okay?" I asked, my voice hoarse from singing all night. Jennifer didn't answer immediately. She was studying the monitors with a confused expression. Finally, she said, "I need to make a note in the chart. I'll be right back." She left quickly, and I looked at Roberto. He was awake now, alert, and I could see the question in his eyes. I shook my head. I didn't know what was happening either. An hour later, the morning shift nurse came in, and I watched the same thing happen. She checked the monitors, frowned, and double-checked the equipment. She asked Jennifer if she had verified that everything was functioning correctly. Jennifer confirmed she had, twice. Something was different, something had changed, but no one was telling me what. When Dr. Chen arrived at 7:30, I could see she was braced for the worst. She had the face of someone preparing to deliver terrible news, probably preparing to tell us that Sophia had died in the night and we just hadn't realized it yet. But when she saw Sophia still breathing, still alive, confusion flickered across her face. She approached the monitors and studied them for a long moment. Then she pulled out her penlight and examined Sophia. I watched every movement, trying to read her body language, trying to understand what she was seeing. Dr. Chen shined the light in Sophia's eyes, and I saw them react. The pupils constricted in response to the light. That hadn't happened yesterday. Yesterday, Sophia's pupils had been fixed and dilated, unresponsive to stimuli. The doctor ran her finger along the bottom of Sophia's foot. Sophia's toes curled downward, a normal reflex. A reflex that had been absent for days. Dr. Chen straightened up and looked at me, and I could see she was choosing her words very carefully. "Mrs. Martinez, I'm seeing some changes in Sophia's condition." My heart started racing. What kind of changes? Is it the end? No, actually the opposite. Her vital signs have stabilized. I'm seeing neurological responses that weren't present yesterday. What does that mean? Roberto asked, moving closer to the bed. I don't know yet, Dr. Chen admitted, and that honesty was somehow more encouraging than false optimism would have been. This could be a temporary rally before the end. That does happen sometimes. But I want to run more tests. I want another CT scan, new blood work. I need to understand what's happening. Hope flickered in my chest, dangerous and painful. I tried to push it down. I couldn't survive another emotional roller coaster. I had spent 3 days preparing for Sophia's death. I had said goodbye. I couldn't do it all again. But I couldn't ignore what Dr. Chen was saying either. Tentar novamente F continuar. Over the next few hours, they transported Sophia for tests. I walked beside her gurney, refusing to let go of her hand, afraid that if I stopped touching her, she would disappear. Every test felt eternal. The CT scan, the blood work, an EEG to measure brain activity. I stood outside the imaging room with my back pressed against the wall, my eyes closed, praying to a God I wasn't sure was listening. I made bargains in my head. I promised to be better, to do better, to give up anything if Sophia could just live. When they finally wheeled Sophia back to her room, I climbed back into the bed with her immediately. I needed to feel her breathing, needed to know she was still here. Dr. Chen disappeared to review the scans, and the waiting nearly killed me. Minutes felt like hours. I watched the clock on the wall, counting seconds, wondering what the images would show, wondering if I was about to have my fragile hope crushed completely. When Dr. Chen finally returned, she looked like someone who had just witnessed something that violated the laws of physics. Her face was pale. Her eyes were wide. She asked us to follow her to a small conference room, and my legs barely supported me as I walked. She pulled up Sophia's scans on a computer screen. Side by side, she displayed the scan from 3 days ago and the new scan from this morning. "This is from 3 days ago," she said, pointing to the large mass that had haunted my nightmares. "And this is from this morning." I stared at the images, trying to understand what I was seeing. The tumor was still there. I could see it clearly, but it looked different. The edges were less defined, the mass appeared smaller, and the swelling that had been crushing Sophia's brainstem had decreased dramatically. "I don't understand," I whispered. "What does this mean?" Dr. Chen took a deep breath, and I could see her hands were shaking slightly. "The swelling around the tumor has decreased by approximately 60%. The pressure on the brainstem has been significantly relieved. The tumor itself appears to have shrunk, though I need to do measurements to confirm the exact amount." "But how?" Roberto demanded. "What did you do? What treatment worked?" "That's what I can't explain," Dr. Chen said, and I heard genuine confusion in her voice. "We gave Sophia minimal steroids because her body was too weak for aggressive treatment. We didn't do radiation. We didn't do chemotherapy. We did nothing that should have produced this result." "So what are you saying?" I asked, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Dr. Chen looked directly at me. "I'm saying I have no medical explanation for what's happening to your daughter. The tumor should still be growing. The swelling should be getting worse. Sophia should have died yesterday. Instead, her condition has improved in ways that contradict everything I know about DIPG tumors." The word improved echoed in my head. Improved, not stabilized, not temporarily rallied. Improved. "Is she going to be okay?" I asked, afraid of the answer but desperate to know. "I don't know," Dr. Chen admitted. "I truly don't know. We need to continue monitoring her closely. But what's happening right now is unprecedented." We returned to Sophia's room in a daze. I couldn't process what I had just been told. For 3 days, I had lived in a nightmare with a certain ending. Now the ending had changed, but I didn't know what it had changed to. Throughout the afternoon, more doctors appeared. I watched them examine Sophia, study her charts, have hushed conversations in the hallway. The atmosphere had shifted from a death watch to something else, something I didn't dare name yet because naming it might make it disappear. My mother clutched her rosary and declared it was a miracle. She said the Virgin Mary had heard our prayers and was saving Sophia. I wanted to believe her, but I was too afraid. What if this was just a cruel trick? What if Sophia improved for a day or two, only to crash and die anyway? By late afternoon, something happened that made my heart stop. I was lying beside Sophia, holding her hand, when I felt her fingers twitch. Not a muscle spasm, not an involuntary movement, a deliberate squeeze. I gasped. "Roberto, did you see that?" "See what?" "Her hand." She squeezed my hand. We both stared at Sophia's hand, waiting, and then it happened again. A weak but unmistakable squeeze of my fingers. I started crying, not the desperate, anguished tears of the past 3 days, but tears of something I was afraid to call hope. I called for the nurse, my voice shaking. Jennifer rushed in. "What's wrong?" She squeezed my hand. Sophia squeezed my hand. Jennifer approached the bed and spoke directly to Sophia. "Sophia, if you can hear me, squeeze your mum's hand." We all held our breath, and then, slowly, Sophia's fingers tightened around mine. Jennifer's eyes went wide. She immediately checked Sophia's pupils, her reflexes, her responses. "She's showing purposeful movement," Jennifer said, and I could hear amazement in her voice. "Yesterday she had almost no response. Now she's responding to commands." She called for Dr. Chen, and within minutes the room was full of doctors. They conducted examination after examination. Sophia's pupils reacted to light. Her reflexes were present. When they asked her to move her toes, she did. When they asked her to squeeze their fingers, she did. I watched all of this happening and felt like I was in a dream. This couldn't be real. Children with DIPG tumors didn't improve. They died. That's what Dr. Chen had told us. That's what all the research said. There was no cure, no treatment, no hope. So how was Sophia responding to commands? How was her tumor shrinking? How was any of this possible? Dr. Chen pulled me aside after the examination. I've called in every specialist I know. Tomorrow morning, we're having a team meeting to discuss Sophia's case, because I have to be honest with you. I've never seen anything like this in my entire career. Is this a miracle? I asked, the word feeling strange in my mouth. Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. I'm a scientist. I look for medical explanations, but right now, I don't have one. What's happening to Sophia defies every principle of oncology I know. That night, I stayed in the bed with Sophia, afraid to leave her side, even for a moment. Roberto sat in the chair beside us, and my mother kept her vigil in the corner with her rosary. None of us spoke much. We were all afraid that if we acknowledged what seemed to be happening, it would stop, but I couldn't help watching Sophia's face, searching for signs of consciousness. And around midnight, I saw something that made me stop breathing. Sophia's eyes were moving behind her closed eyelids. Rapid eye movements, like she was dreaming. I had read somewhere that REM sleep indicated brain activity, indicated consciousness, indicated life. I reached out and stroked her hair and whispered, "Come back to us, baby. Please come back." And as if she had heard me, Sophia's eyes fluttered. It was just a small movement, barely noticeable. But I saw it. Roberto saw it. My mother saw it. We all leaned closer, holding our breath, waiting. And then, slowly, impossibly, Sophia's eyes began to open. They were unfocused at first, glassy and confused, but they were open. After 3 days of lying unconscious, dying, my daughter's eyes were open. "Sophia," I whispered, afraid that speaking too loudly would break the spell. Her eyes moved, trying to focus, trying to find me. "Mommy?" The word was barely audible, hoarse and weak, but it was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. I started sobbing. Roberto lunged forward, his face crumbling. My mother fell to her knees, thanking God. "I'm here, baby," I said, my hands shaking as I touched her face. "Mommy's right here." "Where am I?" Sophia asked, her voice confused and scared. "You're in the hospital, sweetheart. You've been sick, but you're okay. You're going to be okay." I didn't know if that was true. I had no idea what was happening or what would happen next, but in that moment, with Sophia awake and talking and alive, I believed it with every fiber of my being. Jennifer came running when I pressed the call button. She stopped short when she saw Sophia awake, her hand flying to her mouth. "Get Dr. Chen," she said to another nurse. "Get her now." The next hour was chaos. Doctors flooded the room. They examined Sophia, asked her questions, tested her responses. And Sophia, my incredible daughter, answered them. She was confused and weak, but she was conscious. She was there. Dr. Chen kept shaking her head in disbelief. She would conduct a test, see the result, then conduct it again, as if she couldn't trust her own observations. Sophia was functioning. Her brain was working. She was awake and responsive in ways that should have been medically impossible. As dawn broke on the 5th day, I sat beside Sophia's bed, holding her hand while she slept. Real sleep this time, not the death-like unconsciousness of the past days. I looked at Roberto, and I could see the same emotion on his face that I felt in my chest. Something impossible was happening, something science couldn't explain, something that looked an awful lot like a miracle. And for the first time in 4 days, I dared to believe that maybe, just maybe, my daughter was going to survive. The days between the 4th and 7th day passed in a blur of cautious hope and lingering terror. I was afraid to believe what I was seeing, afraid that if I acknowledged the miracle, it would be snatched away. But Sophia kept improving. On the 5th day, she stayed awake for longer periods. She asked for water. She asked about her stuffed elephant, Mr. Trunks. She asked when she could go home. Each question felt like a gift I didn't deserve. On the 6th day, she sat up with assistance. The physical therapist came and helped her move her legs. She was weak, so weak, but she was moving. She was there. She was alive. But it was the 7th day that changed everything. I woke up on the morning of the 7th day, with Sophia still asleep beside me. I had been counting the days obsessively. Day 1, when we got the diagnosis. Day 2, when Sophia stopped responding. Day 3, when we prepared for her death. Day 4, when the impossible began. And now Day 7, the 7th day. In religious texts, the 7th day was when God rested after creation, when things were complete, when miracles were acknowledged. I didn't know if I believed in that symbolism, but I couldn't ignore it either. Sophia stirred beside me around 6 in the morning. I watched as her eyes opened, fully opened, not the confused, unfocused opening of the past few days. These were alert eyes, aware eyes. "Mommy," she said, and her voice was stronger than it had been. "I'm hungry." I started crying immediately. Hungry, such a simple, ordinary word, but it meant everything. It meant her body was healing. It meant she was coming back to us. "What do you want to eat, baby?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Pancakes," she said without hesitation, "with chocolate chips. And can we watch cartoons?" I laughed and cried at the same time. Pancakes and cartoons. The most normal request in the world. The most miraculous request in the world. I called the nurse, and within minutes the room was full of people. Dr. Chen arrived, still in her street clothes again, having rushed to the hospital. She conducted a full neurological examination while I watched, my heart in my throat. Sophia followed commands perfectly. She squeezed fingers when asked. She moved her toes. She tracked objects with her eyes. She answered questions appropriately. Every response was normal. Every response was impossible. "I want to do another CT scan," Dr. Chen said. "Right away." They wheeled Sophia down to radiology, and I walked beside her, holding her hand. Sophia chatted the whole way, asking about things she had missed, wondering why everyone was acting so weird. She didn't understand what had happened. In her mind, she had just been sleeping. She didn't know she had been dying. She didn't know everyone had given up hope. She didn't know she was supposed to be dead. The scan took 45 minutes. I stood outside the imaging room, pacing back and forth, my hands clasped so tightly my knuckles were white. Roberto stood with me, and I could see the same terror and hope warring on his face that I felt in my chest. When they brought Sophia back to her room, Dr. Chen disappeared to review the results. The waiting was torture. I climbed into bed with Sophia and held her, breathing in the scent of her hair, feeling the warmth of her body against mine. She was alive. She was here. But for how long? 20 minutes later, Dr. Chen returned with 3 other doctors. Her face was pale. Her eyes were red. When she looked at me, I saw something in her expression I had never seen before. "Awe. We need to talk," she said quietly. We followed her to the conference room, and she pulled up Sophia's scans on the large screen. She displayed the original scan from 7 days ago, the scan from day 4, and the new scan from this morning. "This was the tumor 7 days ago," she said, pointing to the massive growth that had been crushing Sophia's brainstem. "This was day 4. The tumor was noticeably smaller. And this is today." I stared at the 3rd image, unable to process what I was seeing. The tumor was barely visible. Where there had been a large, aggressive mass, now there was just a small shadow, almost nothing. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Where did it go?" Dr. Chen's hands were shaking as she pointed to the measurements on the screen. "The tumor has shrunk by approximately 85% from its original size. The swelling is completely gone. Sophia's brainstem is functioning normally. Her brain activity is normal. Everything is normal. But that's impossible," Roberto said. "You said DIPG tumors don't shrink. You said they don't respond to treatment. You said Sophia would die." "I know what I said," Dr. Chen replied, and I could hear emotion cracking her professional voice. "And by every measure of medical science, I was right. DIPG tumors don't behave this way. They don't shrink spontaneously. They certainly don't shrink this quickly. What's happening to Sophia contradicts everything we know about this disease." "Are you saying she's cured?" I asked, afraid to speak the word aloud. Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. "I'm saying that Sophia's tumor has almost completely resolved through a mechanism we don't understand. I've consulted with specialists across the country. I've presented her case to tumor boards. No one has ever seen anything like this." "Is it a miracle?" my mother asked from the doorway, and I hadn't even realized she was there. Dr. Chen looked at her, then at me, then at the scans on the screen. "I'm a scientist. I've spent my entire career studying medicine, looking for logical explanations for everything. But I have no logical explanation for this. What's happening to Sophia is medically impossible. Whether you want to call that a miracle or spontaneous remission or something we don't have a name for yet, I can't say. All I can tell you is that 7 days ago, I told you Sophia had 3 days to live. Today she's awake, responsive, and her tumor has almost completely disappeared." I felt my legs give out. Roberto caught me, and we sank into chairs together, holding each other as the reality of what we were being told penetrated our exhausted minds. Sophia was alive. Sophia was improving. Sophia might actually survive. We returned to Sophia's room to find her watching cartoons on the TV, laughing at something on the screen. She looked up when we entered and smiled, a real, genuine Sophia smile that I thought I would never see again. "Can I have those pancakes now?" she asked. I started laughing and couldn't stop. Pancakes. My daughter wanted pancakes. The mundane request was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. The hospital kitchen wasn't equipped to make chocolate chip pancakes, so Roberto went out to a nearby diner and brought back a huge stack. I watched Sophia eat them with an appetite I hadn't seen in days, and every bite felt like a miracle. Throughout the day, word spread through the hospital. Nurses and doctors who had been preparing for Sophia's death came by to see her alive and improving. They stood in the doorway with expressions of wonder, witnessing something they had never seen before. One elderly doctor, someone I had never met, stopped by and just stared at Sophia for a long moment. Then he looked at me with tears in his eyes and said, "I've been practicing medicine for 40 years. I've never believed in miracles, but I might have to reconsider." By evening of the 7th day, Sophia was sitting up in bed, coloring in a book that one of the nurses had brought her. She was weak and tired easily, but she was undeniably there, undeniably alive, undeniably healing. I sat beside her bed watching her color and felt a peace I hadn't felt in 7 days. It was fragile peace, still tinged with fear that this could all be taken away, but it was peace nonetheless. Dr. Chen visited one more time before leaving for the night. She pulled up a chair and looked at Sophia with an expression of wonder. "Sophia," she said gently, "do you remember anything about the past week?" Sophia scrunched up her face, thinking, "Not really. I remember my head hurting at school. And then, it's kind of fuzzy. I had weird dreams." "What kind of dreams?" Dr. Chen asked. "I dreamed I was floating," Sophia said, still coloring, "and I saw Abuela's mama. You know, the one in the pictures who died a long time ago." My breath caught. Roberto's grandmother had died 5 years earlier. Sophia had only been 3 years old. She barely remembered her. "What did she say to you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sophia looked up from her coloring. "She said it wasn't my time yet. She said you and Daddy needed me, so I had to go back, so I came back." The room went completely silent. Dr. Chen stared at Sophia with wide eyes. Roberto grabbed my hand so tightly it hurt. My mother crossed herself and began praying softly. "You came back," I repeated. "From where?" Sophia shrugged, already losing interest in the conversation, turning back to her coloring. "I don't know. Just back. Can I have more pancakes tomorrow?" After Sophia fell asleep that night, Dr. Chen pulled me aside in the hallway. "I don't know what to make of what Sophia said about her dream," she said quietly. "As a doctor, I have to tell you it was probably just confusion from being unconscious, maybe medication effects. But," I prompted, because I could hear there was more. "But I've been a doctor for 20 years. I've seen thousands of patients, and I've learned that there are things that happen in medicine that we can't explain. Sophia survived something that should have killed her. Her tumor shrank through a mechanism we don't understand, and now she's telling us she chose to come back." Dr. Chen paused, choosing her words carefully. "I'm not saying I believe in near-death experiences or divine intervention. I'm just saying that after this week, I'm less certain about what's impossible than I used to be. Madame, that night I lay in the bed beside Sophia, listening to her breathe. Deep, even breaths of real sleep. Not the labored, dying gasps of days ago. Not the unconscious breathing of someone slipping away. Just normal, healthy, sleeping breaths. I thought about everything that had happened in the past 7 days, the diagnosis that should have been a death sentence, the 3 days we were given, the death watch, the impossible improvement. And now, Sophia awake and eating pancakes and talking about coming back. Because we needed her. I didn't know if it was a miracle. I didn't know if it was medicine we didn't understand yet. I didn't know if there was a difference between those two things. All I knew was that 7 days ago I'd been told my daughter would die, and now she was alive, healing and asking for pancakes. On the 7th day, the impossible became real. On the 7th day, death lost its certainty. On the 7th day, my daughter came back to me, and that was miracle enough. The weeks after the 7th day were strange in ways I still struggle to articulate. I existed in a constant state of disbelief, waiting for the other shoe to drop, convinced that any moment Sophia would relapse and we would lose her after all. But she kept getting better. By week 2, Sophia was walking the hospital corridors with a walker, her legs shaky but determined. She complained about the physical therapy, about having to do exercises when she just wanted to watch TV. Those complaints were music to my ears. They were normal. They were alive. By week 3, she was walking without assistance. The physical therapist called her recovery remarkable. I called it impossible. Dr. Chen called it unprecedented. We were all talking about the same thing, my daughter defying death, but we used different words because no one knew how to name what was happening. The scans continued every few days. Each time, I stood outside the imaging room with my heart in my throat, terrified that this would be the scan that showed the tumor regrowing, that this brief reprieve had just been a cruel delay of the inevitable. But every scan showed the same impossible result. The tumor continued to shrink. By week 3, it was 90% gone. By week 4, it was barely detectable at all. Dr. Chen stopped trying to explain it through conventional medicine. I watched her transformation from confident physician to humbled observer. She told me honestly that Sophia's case had shaken her fundamental understanding of how medicine worked. I dedicated my entire career to understanding cancer, she said to me one afternoon while Sophia was napping. I thought I knew how tumors behaved, how they grew, how they killed. And then Sophia comes along and breaks every rule I thought was absolute. I asked her what this meant for Sophia's future. Would the tumor stay gone? Could it come back? Would Sophia live a normal life? Dr. Chen's answer was careful and honest. I don't know. I wish I could give you certainty, but I can't. We're in completely uncharted territory. What I can tell you is that right now, today, Sophia is thriving in a way that shouldn't be medically possible. That uncertainty was almost as hard as the initial diagnosis. I couldn't relax. I couldn't trust that this miracle was permanent. Every time Sophia complained of a headache, I panicked. Every time she seemed tired, I wondered if the tumor was returning. Roberto and I both developed a hypervigilance that bordered on pathological. We took turns staying awake at night, watching Sophia sleep, checking that she was still breathing. We jumped at every phone call. We examined her face for signs of decline. Our marriage strained under the weight of it. We snapped at each other over small things. We couldn't talk about what had happened without one of us breaking down. We existed in a limbo between gratitude and terror, never quite landing on either emotion fully. The media discovered Sophia's story somehow. A local news station ran a piece calling her the miracle girl. Then national outlets picked it up. Our phone rang constantly with requests for interviews, for Sophia to appear on talk shows, for documentary filmmakers to tell our story. We said no to almost everything. Sophia's survival wasn't entertainment. It wasn't a feel-good story for strangers to consume. It was our life, our private horror and joy, and I wanted to protect it from being turned into spectacle. But the attention brought something unexpected. Other families started contacting us, families with children who had DIPG or other terminal diagnoses. They were desperate, drowning in the same nightmare we had just survived. They wanted to know what we had done, what treatment had worked, what prayers we had prayed, and I had nothing to give them. That guilt nearly destroyed me. These parents reached out with such hope, such desperation, and I couldn't help them. I couldn't tell them what treatment had saved Sophia because there was no treatment. I couldn't direct them to a special doctor because the doctors were as baffled as anyone. I couldn't even confidently tell them to pray because I didn't know if prayer had worked or if Sophia's survival was just random chance. All I could say was that sometimes the impossible happens, and that truth felt cruel to share. I joined online support groups for parents of children with DIPG. I read their stories, watched their pain unfold in real time, and I watched their children die. One after another, these beautiful children died from the same disease Sophia had survived. Why, Sophia? That question haunted me. Why did my daughter get to live when theirs didn't? What made her special? What made her deserve a miracle when so many others didn't get one? I had no answers. God, if he existed, wasn't explaining his choices to me. 6 weeks after the 7th day, Sophia was discharged from the hospital. The tumor had stabilized at about 5% of its original size, still present, but small enough that Dr. Chen felt comfortable sending us home with a plan for close monitoring. Home. The word felt foreign. We had spent so much time in that hospital that I had almost forgotten what home felt like. When we pulled into our driveway with Sophia in the back seat, chattering about seeing her room again, I broke down completely. Roberto had to help me out of the car because my legs wouldn't support me. We were home. Sophia was alive. We had survived. Sophia ran straight to her room, actually ran on legs that had been dying 6 weeks ago, and grabbed Mr. Trunks, hugging him tightly. She was so happy, so oblivious to how close she had come to never seeing this room again. That first night home, I couldn't sleep. I kept getting up to check on Sophia, to make sure she was still breathing, to confirm this wasn't an elaborate dream. Roberto found me at 3 in the morning, sitting on the floor beside Sophia's bed, crying silently. "She's okay," he whispered, kneeling beside me. "For now," I whispered back. "But what if it comes back? What if we lose her after all?" He had no answer because we both knew it was possible. The tumor could regrow. Sophia could relapse. We were living on borrowed time, though we didn't know how much time we had borrowed. Sophia returned to school 8 weeks after her diagnosis. Her classmates welcomed her with a party, banners and decorations and excited questions. Sophia handled it with remarkable grace, answering honestly but without drama. Yes, she had been sick. Yes, she had a brain tumor. No, she didn't remember much. Could they please just play now? Watching her try to return to normal life broke my heart in a new way. Sophia wanted to be just another kid, but she would never be just another kid again. She was the miracle girl, the impossible survivor, and that label would follow her forever. 3 months after the 7th day, we returned for comprehensive testing. The anxiety nearly killed me. This would tell us if the improvement was lasting or if we were about to face another nightmare. The scan took 30 minutes. The wait for results felt like 30 years. When Dr. Chen finally called us into her office, I searched her face desperately for clues. She pulled up the new scans and for a long moment just stared at them. "The tumor has continued to shrink," she said quietly. "It's now less than 2% of its original size, essentially undetectable." What does that mean?" I asked, afraid to hope. "It means Sophia is in remission." Dr. Chen spoke the words carefully, as if testing them out. Deep, sustained remission from a tumor that should have killed her months ago. I couldn't breathe. Remission. The word I had stopped allowing myself to believe was possible. "Could it come back?" Roberto asked, voicing the fear that lived permanently in both our chests. "Yes," Dr. Chen admitted. "DIPG is unpredictable. But what's happened so far gives me genuine hope that Sophia may have truly beaten this. We left the hospital that day with a lightness I hadn't felt in months. Sophia skipped beside us, asking for ice cream, completely unaware of the magnitude of what we had just learned. We took her for ice cream. We let her order whatever she wanted. We sat in the ice cream shop and watched our daughter be alive and normal, and every moment felt precious beyond measure. 6 months after the 7th day, Sophia's tumor was completely undetectable on scans. Dr. Chen used the word cured for the first time, though she cautioned we would need ongoing monitoring. Cured. I had stopped believing that word could apply to Sophia. But sitting in that office, looking at scans that showed no trace of the tumor that should have killed my daughter, I finally allowed myself to believe. 1 year after Sophia's diagnosis, we threw her a 9th birthday party. All her friends came. We had cake and games and all the normal things you have at a child's birthday party. Sophia laughed and ran and was completely, beautifully alive. As I watched her blow out her candles, I thought about the hospital room where I had laid beside her, singing lullabies, waiting for her to die. I thought about the 3 days the doctors gave us. I thought about the 7th day when she opened her eyes and came back to me. Some questions don't have answers. Some mysteries remain mysteries. Some miracles, whether divine or medical or something else entirely, can't be explained. Sophia survived something medically impossible. She defied every prediction, broke every rule, and created hope where there had been none. Her story spread through medical journals and news articles and whispered conversations in hospital waiting rooms around the world. But for us, she was just Sophia, our daughter, our miracle, our impossible, wonderful proof that sometimes the darkness doesn't win. Dr. Chen wrote up Sophia's case for medical journals. She presented it at conferences. Other doctors studied the scans, analyzed the data, searched for explanations. They found none. Spontaneous remission of unknown etiology was the official conclusion. Medical speak for, we have absolutely no idea. My mother believes it was divine intervention. She lights candles to the Virgin Mary every week in Thanksgiving. Father Rodriguez agrees, calling Sophia's recovery a sign of God's mercy. Roberto, ever the engineer, remains convinced there's a biological explanation we haven't discovered yet. He believes someday science will explain it. I don't know what I believe anymore. Maybe it was a miracle. Maybe it was science we don't understand yet. Maybe there's no difference between those two things. What I know is that my daughter was given 3 days to live, and she defied those 3 days. On the 7th day, when she should have been dead for 4 days, she opened her eyes and chose to come back to us. And 2 years later, she's still here, still alive, still laughing and growing and being Sophia. Her tumor remains undetectable. Dr. Chen calls her the patient who changed how I think about medicine. Other doctors call her case unprecedented. The medical community has no explanation for why Sophia survived. But I don't need an explanation anymore. I don't need to understand why or how. I just need to hold my daughter, watch her live her life, and be grateful for every impossible day we've been given. On the 7th day, death lost. On the 7th day, my daughter came back to me. On the 7th day, the impossible became real, and that's all the answer I need.